welcome back to the RationalInvestor.com Broiler Chicken Show. Trade your trading plans, don't take too much risk on any one trade, and just let yourself get rich. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the RationalInvestor.com's weekend frivolity, the Broiler Chicken Show. Bark. Because this is our final swan song here for 2025. Also, too, my final broadcast here for TRI. So I hope you all have enjoyed the offering over the years. Won't go into shills or anything like that. I certainly don't want to rock the boat or anything. I'm just going to simply say, if you are watching this and you're not totally hip with what's happening in the new year, and you're on Discord, you can always DM me and we can chat, and I can tell you about future plans. Or you can add me on Twitter at CR Investor here. And we could chat that way. I'll just leave it at that. And if anything, should be really interesting, exciting to see what the principals at TRI have in store for the new year. I suppose you're going to have to tune in and see what they've got. Anyway, we have been putting together this little newsletter. It's a quick little summary, and to all intents and purposes, probably the focus of my conversation with you today. We'll probably just, econs, obviously, with the holiday environment, the econ numbers themselves are fairly light. So I'm not really looking for a huge amount of sort of econ rock the boat here over the next week. Today is the 28th of December here. And if anything, what I had said in the post here with regard to Bitcoin is if you are going to do any tax loss selling, especially with the fact that crypto is same day settlement, I'm not exactly sure what the sort of final cutoff deadline is to sell and book those tax loss sales. But my hunch is probably in the stock market, you're going to see the most activity there first thing out of the gate tomorrow. And then 3-day settlement, they'll be fine. And my hunch is there'll probably be some like smattering of selling on the various different exchanges heading into that calendar event. I do actually like the market trying to find a bottom here, but I will say, and it is a little bit concerning for this space, that there just doesn't seem to be any buying interest whatsoever. And unfortunately, the crypto bros and all those kind of people that would have propped up the market in years gone by in this, insane money grab. I mean, really all these tariffs is just a big tax. And this inflation, which of course we know is the banker's tax. So I think you could quite literally say that not only are the banksters exerting their tax on society right now, but you could even make an argument that the governments themselves are exerting just increasing taxes just at an insane rate through these tariffs. And it's almost funny watching these cross tariffs. Like a country like China, it's laughable. A canister of coffee a couple of years ago was like let's say $7, $8, something like that. And the coffee is grown in South America, but for some reason, Canadians, we have to pay a tariff to Donald Duck down there in the States. And wow, what a shit show that guy is right now, eh? Do we even bother getting into all that? But anyway, so we have to pay a tax to him. This is coffee that's grown in Brazil and sold to a Canadian, and made coffee in a Canadian coffee pot. Absolutely nothing to do with the United States, but because, the way that the oligarchs have set everything up, I don't even think there is such a thing as a Canadian coffee company. So we have to pay a tax to Donald Duck. And then bless our stupid bankster crook central planner governor guy who just put himself in power and took over control of this country. Oh, he's doing a reciprocal tariff on the Americans. And of course, does that hurt a single American? No. So Canadians now, you go to the grocery store and it's literally $20 for that exact same canister of coffee. $8 to $20. So, I mean, in that kind of environment, and that's just one product, it just happens to jump out at me of late. And of course, the powers that be, they're going to blame, well, it's because they're chopping down the rainforest in Brazil. That's why coffee prices are so high right now. It's all due to global warming, cooling. What the hell is it called nowadays? That's the reason why you're paying high prices. Yeah, right. Whatever. Anyway, so it's an environment where everyone is getting squeezed as we make this transition from the baby boomers world into the millennials world. And of course, poor old Gen Xers, they just get left in the dust. I think my entire life, our entire generation has just been overlooked. Oh, well. So, as a result, of course, I think a lot of people were quite upset that the venture capital market really hasn't done a heck of a lot here of late. And I think half the problem is that the typical person that would invest in venture capital, they're broke. And the altcoin market, shortcoin market, the crypto bros, and all that kind of stuff. That I think that segment of the economy and that segment of our society is absolutely strapped for cash right now. So it makes life challenging. I suppose the one good thing, and we're going into Benner's 26 here, so God, this year is going to be crazy. But I suppose the one good thing for the venture cap part of the market is short-term interest rates down in the States are slowly coming back down to earth. So we might see some enthusiasm in the space if the cost of money is brought down appreciably. The only problem with all that, of course, is that we have this absolutely insanely significant political event down in the United States in November. So I actually get the feeling like they're going to try and jack as much bullishness into the market as possible the first half of the year, first quarter of the year. And then I do believe things are going to get a little chaotic into next November. Impossible to tell, but did find it interesting. I'm a big fan of watching celestial events, and I had noticed when I was looking at my solar system image even today, and this actually is going back to 1987. It was in the summer of 1987, and anybody who's been in the market long enough knows something very bad happened in October of 87. It was interesting to see how there was a very specific planetary setup, I guess, celestial event, where you don't often see this, where Mars, Venus, Mercury, Earth all kind of lined up here on the other side of the sun. Pretty big transitional event. And interestingly enough, I was scrolling through the charts here this weekend, because I'm very interested in the fact that Jupiter and Saturn are making an interesting 90-degree angle here now. And given how long it's been since they were, I guess, in conjunct. So if we I don't know whether we can do this or not, but if we can just go to today, boosh. So now December 28, 2025, and lo and behold, look at what's happening here now. Oh, hello. So that kind of jumped out at me. I was a little surprised by that. In fact, actually, these things all come into alignment in like I think it's like January 7th or something. Right in here. And this one's actually worse than 87 because look who we've got just in behind Earth here. Oh man, that's brutal. So, I was looking at this kind of going, that's kind of interesting. I was a bit surprised by that. And I talked to some of our celestially inclined site members. And actually, they shared with me that one lady that I like to listen to, Olga, out of Australia. She doesn't have that much of an Eastern European accent, though. It's kind of funny. Anyway, she did a video up on this because she was quite impressed. People who follow the astrological charts, when you plot them on the actual charts, they look like this. This is that, Earth, Mars, and Venus all coming into conjunct here. And she pointed out the only reason why she remembered it was because it happened to be the day that she met her husband in August of 1987. So in her video, she was talking a little bit about how this was a pretty memorable event for her. But look what happened after. Holy crap. I don't know. I get I'm not one to like do the whole crystal ball kind of thing, but damn, that's pretty crazy. I couldn't believe that when I saw that. So I was like, geez Louise, that's not a good sign. Um, and unfortunately, we all know, right? It's so funny when you go on YouTube now, all these people pulling up the Benner cycle image, and you know that it's the Benner cycle image that TRI put together, Joshy, a while ago, because the original Benner cycle image actually stops. I mean, because keep in mind, the guy lived like 200 years ago. He wasn't in the business of predicting like hundreds of years into the future. I don't know whether this shows it or not. Well, I guess that even has that even longer. I don't remember though. When I originally looked at this, I remember specifically it kind of stopped in the late 90s, early 2000s. Maybe I'm mistaken. Anyway, I'm seeing a lot of people talking about this stuff on YouTube and stuff lately. Anyway, I don't even know who this is. This might not even be. Yeah, so this is some guy on the interneting. Anyway, I think Josh did an absolutely incredible job with this blog post. And the funny thing is this image never went into the 21st century. So I always find it amusing when I see people that have the date of like 2053 on here, because that was never on the original image. Keep in mind, this was actually done like this century over here. Actually, looking out into the 20th century was a bit of a stretch for this thing when he first did this image. But anyway, it's here nor there. Point is, of course, we all know 26 is a minor inflection year here. And of course, we all wanted it to be one of these orgy insane peak years, because this is when you get stupid rich in the marketplace. And of course, when did crypto and Bitcoin have its big hurrah? It was right through that window of basically 2015 to like 2020. So this one's been a bit of a muted bull market, which kind of sucks. But interestingly enough, given all the sort of things that are going on in the background of our nutso society, and the way that basically Joe Sixpack is being taxed from like 20 different directions. And I can literally see around me, the millennials are absolutely strapped. They can barely afford food at the grocery store or rent right now, let alone doing things like, frivolously betting on things like cryptocurrencies. So it is that backdrop. Sucks worse, you know what? Um, and I hate to say it, folks. This is, I would actually argue, this like 6 year window here. I mean, what do you say? I want to tell you that things are going to be roses and sunshine. This this could very easily be the most difficult 4 or 5 years of all of our lives coming up here in this window. That's how absolutely insane this window should be. It really sucks. Um, of course, we know that the stakes down in the United States of America are very, very high right now. I might argue that if Mr. Trump loses the election next November, and to all intents and purposes, it's basically a proxy on him. He's probably going to face basically 2 years of absolute crap and just 24/7 impeach, 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 impeach. And the irony of it all is that's probably going to embolden his political base, the whole MAGA base, if they have to spend 2 years not in control of Congress and basically on the defense. The only thing that they would be holding on to is the executive power. You could definitely see that that could very easily be sort of like the insurgency, especially if the Democrats, with all their central planners and central control and all that kind of crap narrative gets going in earnest. This is going to be historic times we're all living through here, folks. I did find it interesting that The Simpsons actually got wrong. Taco there getting whacked. Um, there are some other funny little omens out there that say things like Donald Trump's supposed to be the last president of the United States of America. I don't know. Pretty wild times we're living in, that's for darn sure. Strap on your seatbelt, folks. It's going to be a wild ride. Obviously, speaking to the crypto kind of community, we would love to talk about how incredibly bullish and enthusiastic everything is and how it's straight line up. I think what happens here, and this is just purely opinion, of course, nobody can predict the future, but I do think that there's going to be some uncertainty around the Supreme Court's decision on tacos tariffs here in January. And I do think to a certain degree that is going to, I think in early January, injects quite a bit of uncertainty into the market. And it was weird how, back in the January barometer from last year, there was a bit of skittishness heading into the end of the year. And so it was kind of like, and actually, we could probably talk a little bit about what gold's doing here. Notice how gold, and the worst part about this is I fucking talked about this trade ad nauseum, and I completely missed it on this damn thing. But remember that reference to Olga and August 23rd there in 1987. So that was basically right here on this Newmont chart. So you could make the argument that history sure is trying to repeat itself here. That's the gold bull there in 87, and then if we fast forward to today, there's the bull market in 2025. So I get the impression, if anything, looking at price action here and looking at the way that we consolidated and blasted higher here, although I don't know. Oh, no, I can't, darn it. I can get back there. But you've noticed in like 87, I got a funny feeling there's going to be an absolutely insane blow off top here in this gold. I get the impression that we're like right here right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of sideways And then there's one more just absolutely insane end of the world blow off top. This might happen like through, if we just use the parallels, this was April, and then you had your big blow off top there, June through to September. So if we think of this as November, April is 4 months prior. So the peak there, September, 4 months prior to that, August, July, June, May. And the irony of it all is that actually, if we go back to things like this is what I think needs to happen. Very similar to 1946, I think. It's remarkable how this stuff just keeps repeating itself over and over. Anyway, here's 46. This is what I think that the environment that we're in right now. Notice the end of 45, and notice how the stock market even now is just booming higher here, right? We're basically ramping up. I do like the idea that 26, unfortunately, is a transition year. Think Benner. If we think about things like January barometer, I think you could very easily see a big pop higher out of January. Then sort of like middle to the end of January, a big meltdown here into the end of January, beginning of February, which sort of reflects that uncertainty around November's election. So then if we play that out through the whole year, you have that push up in the first half of the year. Notice this peak there, May 27th. And then once that May top comes, whoa, we just head right over a cliff here. And I think there's going to be some sort of major shock that's going to absolutely rock the market. I actually get the impression, I wouldn't be surprised if it is like some, there's so many different variables. I could easily see it be something like China invades Taiwan. I could see it being something like Russia provokes NATO and they go into full-on conflict. I could see some sort of wrench in the works with regard to oil, and it goes absolutely apeshit crazy. That could definitely be in the cards. And on the other side, I could also see that, maybe the economic troubles in China get so bad that Winnie the Pooh gets knocked over, or even Vladdy gets knocked over. I don't know. There's those issues jump out at me as paramount right now. Ironically enough, having the metals markets go absolutely as crazy as they are right now might actually put a serious dent into things like electronic vehicle production, EVs. All of that. I'm hearing, of course, that basically they're running out of silver. They're actually now, this is beautiful. Only these stupid humans can do this. They're actually now, the reason why silver prices are going parabolic is because silver now is an AI metal. What? You can't script this shit any better. So, the scuttlebutt is now that the world is running out of silver because, of course, everybody's going to be building data centers, and I think solar panels take a whole bunch of silver and all this. Hell, even my Lululemon stock is rallying because obviously all the ladies don't want to stink up to high heaven there while they're sweating to the oldies and all that. Everybody's using silver. It's the next best thing since sliced bread. So anyway, I think that this is sort of like a everything melt up kind of environment here. And I hate to say it, but I think into that seasonal peak, I think that's when, I wouldn't be surprised if gold at some point says, "Okay, enough is enough. I'm the big boy here. You should be paying attention to me." But the worst part about this is I totally called this, and yet I totally lollygagged the trade because I'm so distracted with other things going on in my life right now. But I would say conservatively, we're probably right here. And we've got one more absolute insane push higher here right into now, like I said before, and I like the alignment here that they're setting this up as like a 46 repeat kind of idea. Um, one might even argue that maybe the Supreme Court says, "I'm sorry, Mr. Trump, your tariffs are completely illegal. Please give all these people their money back." Do you think the con job Carney guy is going to give any Canadian a single penny back that he's charged Canadians as, "Oh, this is our revenge. We're going to take revenge on Donald Trump by fucking over the Canadian public some more"? How does that work? And how does the public buy this shit without saying boo? I mean, that's how financially unintelligent the public is. I mean, it's remarkable how they just, I've been training and teaching people now for 15 years. I think, as well as being a market participant for 40 years, I think I can comfortably speak to how utterly and completely stupid the public are when it comes to money. And the worst part about it, of course, is in here. Is it could very easily be, well, the United States of America is going bankrupt. 2 trillion deficit. How about $4 trillion deficit? How about 5? Do I hear 6? Do I hear 7? Do I hear 8? Whatever. So, if anything, this is also a beautiful anecdote about how absolutely insane our lives are going to get here over the next 4 years. What is interesting about this, of course, is they always say the market is a forward discounting mechanism. So one might argue that they are now pricing in the crisis. And of course, when we are in the middle of the crisis, that's when these things will top out. That's probably when the stock market tops out. Then we go through some sort of absolute meltdown in asset prices, and the politicians all coming running out and say, "I will sacrifice my life to save capitalism." Rinse and repeat. We do the whole damn thing all over again. So, yeah, rinse and repeat. Same old, same old. But I will tell you, man, I'm pretty pissed off at myself for missing that trade. I do have a whole bunch of little junior gold stocks and intermediate gold stocks and stuff. They're doing all right, but the seniors was definitely the place to be here in the metals markets. And I suppose if we looked at some of the other silver stocks, I know there was a bunch of TRIers that did go and actually load up on these metal names at the bottom. Bob T, I can think of in particular. He's probably rolling in all of his doubles. And of course, there are people at TRI that just bought bricks of silver and are just sitting there hunky-dory, all happy. In fact, we had one TRIer went bought himself a big fancy car with all of his winnings from the past year. He was so proud of himself. So way to go, all you profit takers. This was definitely where the bull was this particular year, that's for sure. Anyway, so I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is we are coming into the end of the year, and I do think that there should be some position squaring heading into the end of the year. And then I think, and this would be my professional humble opinion, especially in this kind of environment, I actually think it will be what I'll be doing. Whatever you do with your money, you do with your money. But I think I'm going to be in like watching and waiting mode. Considering that commentary about how the Dow acted in 46, And which screen was it? Fudge. I can never remember where the hell I put these damn charts. And then, our conversation there about Olga. How did I put the damn chart? It's not over here. Okay. Brian's gone a little crazy here. In fact, actually, sort of a side to this, but I think it actually plays in very well, is you can see that the US dollar, I was reviewing this with the TRI people on Friday. You can see that it looks like the US dollar wants to make some sort of capitulation dump here. I can feel it coming. I still think, on balance, though, that this currency, the US dollar itself, was supposed to bottom in 2018. So, in a weird sort of way, obviously through the financial crisis, the great financial crisis, all that nonsense, they actually bottomed the US dollar index and then they went on their printing spree. They bottomed it in 2008, which was a bit odd. And so I'm thinking, and actually, you can even see this on things like the Dow Gold ratio. I'm thinking that there's some sort of massive, like harmonic that's actually playing out here. This, in essence, this is if this is going down, then it means people are valuing gold more than paper assets. Hard assets over paper assets. So, since that funny sort of reset back there there was the financial crisis there in 2008. And then, the market bought it. And the US went and just basically printed money like crazy. In a weird sort of way, I think that debate is still being played out in the marketplace, and I do find it fascinating how the big celestial event was that 2020 right in there, and it almost feels like that's almost exactly the midpoint of whatever this bottoming process has been. If this is a harmonic, then I definitely think, and considering how close this was to 61.8, that's doable that this could be a Gartley. Might have to be a bat, which means we have to come down to 88.6, somewhere down in that area. But I definitely think that into the spring, the way that you saw Newmont there, and we didn't really look at any of the metals in particular, but Newmont as a gold stock proxy, I think it's not a bad proxy. And then if we look at this US dollar, that looks very bearish right now. I'm actually quite surprised at how bearish it looks, but considering there's like 3 or 4 major variables here that could easily knock this down. I mean, obviously, number one, a nation's currency is definitely a proxy on its leadership. And I don't think Donald Trump is actually a very good leader. And I think that's being reflected in the currency to a certain degree. And of course, you look around the world, lots of talk about people selling US dollars and this is the end of the US dollar and blah, 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 blah. But I also think, too, you could make the argument that the US economy itself is in a bit of a pickle here. Inflation, of course, hasn't really gone away. And what will probably happen here is the way that the U.S. Federal Reserve Board has been politicized. I get the impression that the banksters are like, fine, you want inflation? Fuck you. Hey, we'll back away. You want lower rates? Great. Inflation's going to go absolutely out of control. Anybody who knows Economics 101 understands how inflationary pressures work. And I absolutely guarantee you, if anybody has any opportunity to raise prices in this kind of environment, they will. And the only way that you stop that is if the broader economy sees, well, we just can't raise prices anymore. The consumer just can't take it. and you finally get that sort of recession that kills the inflation drive. So I don't think that scenario, they have been lowering interest rates. Obviously, there's a ton of doctoring of economic data. Taco and his crew went and just basically shut the U.S. government down, probably because they didn't like the data that was coming out and they wanted to somehow engineer less government spending, right? And I think they did that pretty well, just basically shutting the whole damn government down. So you can make the argument that whether it be economically justified or not, but lower short-term interest rates implies that there's less propensity, less desire by international bankster crooks of the world to hold U.S. paper. And now the talk, of course, is that the Japanese are actually starting to raise interest rates. So maybe they'll take their money out of U.S. dollars, go buy Japanese yen, and go and collect the interest there. Or, and this is even a bigger issue, is that for about 20 years now, people have been very comfortable about going and borrowing money in Japan at no interest, taking that money, converting it to US dollars, Australian dollars, Chinese dollars, euros, whatever, and just simply buying the government paper there and collecting the interest. And, it's a nice profit margin as long as the Japanese yen stays low and the Japanese don't charge any interest for borrowing money. That's what's called the carry trade. So if that's starting to unwind, oh boy, that could be problematic for the US dollar. I would also say, too, that if the Supreme Court does come out and say, sorry, Mr. Trump, you exceeded your authority as the executive, and you must refund all these tariffs that you charged all these companies, I could tell you absolutely that is going to be horrendously bearish of the US dollar, because it will imply that all this sort of, hey, we're balancing the budget, we're making America great again, all that poof goes bye-bye. And you might find that they're just an absolute run on the US dollar here. So, there are definitely reasons why this US dollar index could come off hard here now. And in a weird sort of way, I actually think that, everything that's sort of playing out with this 26 sort of chaotic climax to this whole stuff. I mean, God, you go out on the internet and you listen to all the celestial people, they're like, my God, it's the end of the world. 26, this is it, Unfortunately, with that celestial stuff, it doesn't necessarily translate that exactly what's going to happen. It just doesn't exist. But what you do know is that through these kind of, you want to see what it implies. Of course, everybody gets a kick out of this image. Through these insane celestial events, the humans start doing really weird things. I'm actually surprised that our entire society now isn't wearing ridiculous outfits and living this life. What happened to this? But considering what I just showed you with the Jupiter, Venus, Mars, Earth, we might just go back into this insanity for the next little while. So be prepared, folks. And actually, what was really fascinating was I was watching a Y-Files, I guess it is. I don't know whether you've ever seen that guy on YouTube. But actually, it turns out that there was actually studies done on these celestial events back in the 1930s. I'll try and find that Y-Files specifically. It was weird. It was a broadcast that covered about 20 different topics, but there was one little section where the US government actually went into great detail asking whether there was any effect on the humans through these celestial events. And it turns out actually there is actually trackable data. And the weird thing is the guy who did the study, he was basically ostracized. Very bizarre. I mean, I'll share it with the TRI people, I suppose, in the lounge when I find the link later. I was fascinated that there actually is studies that have been done that clearly shows that things like magnetic interference. I can't go into too much detail about it because, frankly, I'm not an authority on it. But I was actually quite surprised that there is actually a study that actually correlates that when these multiple planet events happen, the humans go a little bit nutso. So anyway, I guess it shouldn't surprise us that this very rare event, like I said, last time it happened, and the only reason why Olga referenced it was because it just so happened to be the day that she met her husband, so she'll remember that day for the rest of her life. But I put a tweet out on this. I was absolutely shocked. There is the event in 87, there's the peak, and there we are in 2025. And everything sure as hell looks like it's setting up for some sort of peak here in early January. I don't know whether we can push higher into later on in the end of the year or into the year, but I definitely think, especially if we think January barometer, because any way you shake it, man, anybody who is sort of a skeptic, I think you got to look at this and you got to go, yeah, there must be something to this. That January barometer last year was just insane. Let's see if I can find the damn screen. There it is here. So I was actually a bit surprised that that rally popped up out of nowhere on Friday, because really it was only driven by one story. And what a surprise! This guy Musk, he seems to be sticking his thumbs into everything. And actually, like this, I suppose, a big part of this year's price action and the kind of screwy world we're in was all about him and his. What a shame that he completely destroyed that Doge story in crypto. It was such a perfect story. It had all the hallmarks of everything about why we were interested in crypto. And one person can come along and completely derail that entire story. It was just such a cool story. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. So a little surprised here of late. I was expecting to see a bit more selling here into the end of the year. Something obviously changed them, but the only story on Friday was Alan and his weird AI company doing further deals with NVIDIA and stuff like that. Ironically enough, it didn't actually really even move NVIDIA. I listen to a bunch of day traders and stuff getting ready for the day. And they were talking about the deal. It did cause NVIDIA to gap higher, but that rally kind of stalled out through the day. And of course, these guys, of course, are supposed to be our ultimate leading indicator for the economy. I don't think that they have actually officially topped out yet. And the moving averages are still fairly bullish here. This is the semiconductor index. So that was sort of the reason, I suppose, they had for why the stock market rebounded there on Friday. I will say there are a couple things about this stock market that are starting to get worrisome again. So I'm a big fan of things like the Dow theory. And of late, things were looking pretty optimistic as the transports were continuing to work higher. So anytime you see the transports moving higher with the Dow, and you see the Dow pushing to new highs, and you see the transports pushing to new highs, that means everything's fine, and bull market's fine. But you notice something happened here. Dow pushed to new highs, but the transports actually haven't, and the transports even potentially have a bit of an M here. So if that M does confirm, then it means what we're seeing out of the Dow here is a little bit suspicious. Something's not right. But, given the fact that, the January barometer last year suggested there was going to be some selling into the end of the year, and given the fact that the stock market has had one hell of a year, it doesn't surprise me at all that we're going to see some profit taking heading into the end of the year. If anything, like I've said a couple times here now, I'm actually pretty surprised at the relative strength of this market. Um, and then, do we really want to go and, have big upside expectations here with that January barometer of 2026 just right in front of us? And ironically enough, I actually think the January barometer of 2026 could look a hell of a lot like what we just went through. I think there's going to be an initial perk up, and you can see right out of the gate last year, they actually gapped the market higher first day. Then they dumped it as we were moving our way through the first day, sort of showing that, hey, we're going to have a big bull, and then things are going to fall off the wheels fall off the bus, but then we're going to rally back strong. So anyway, isn't that exactly what happened? We moved our way a bit higher. If wheels fell off the bus, then we're going to rally strong. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was something along these lines. And also, too, if we're thinking, some sort of spring peak there. Remember 1946 with the Dow? So, I guess I got rid of it. Yeah. No. Some other chart. Anyway. If you also extrapolate this the first day, then we go first week and notice, well, they open it up, then they took it down, and then they brought it back. So, and then if you project that over the entire year, so then they first they took it up a little bit to begin with, then they had to knock it down. Then they brought it right back. And then, of course, into the end of the year, we kind of waffled here a bit, but didn't really break down in earnest. You might even argue, except for this last candle here, we're up pretty much close to the end of the highs there at the end of the study. Does that mean that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we could see a big whack of profit taking come into the market? Right? It wouldn't shock me. Let's put it that way. I don't know, but with the January barometer staring us in the face here next week, I'm a little bit leery about really placing any bets here until we get through this first week or so. I guess the point being, kind of like what I just said there a moment ago, believe it or not, through January, I'm going to be looking for sort of hints as to what 26 is going to look like. And, if we do get this sort of sell off, and I guess how would it work? I actually like the idea of the market working its way a bit higher here through January, but then through February, we have to pull back. And, as an old commodities broker, selling unleaded gasoline there, the middle of the winter, we just simply say you buy your unleaded the middle of February, you sell at the middle of May, you made money 9 out of the past 10 years. And those trades usually set up about the second or third week of February. So me personally, I'm probably just going to be watching how January develops and then hunting for those trade setups the second week of February. So FYI, for whatever it's worth. I don't know, there's a heck of a lot more to talk about in the stock market. I will say right now, I actually like the idea that the metals markets are rallying into technical objectives. I still think that there's another wave higher to go here. Kind of what I showed you out of that Newmont and how it ought to move higher here. If we look at, I wonder though whether maybe silver's gotten a little bit ahead of itself. Yeah, which one do I have it on here? Yeah, over here. Silver actually hit a couple really, really big technical objectives this past week. So, I'm a pretty big fan of this chaos theory. And this is one level that we've sort of added to the chaos theory kind of thinking, this 1.618. And also too, notice that this is also a 1.618 off of the range from 1980. I think that's pretty significant. Believe it or not, actually, this does imply that we probably need to go up to that $100 an ounce, probably before the end of this. Having said that, in the near term, and then, thinking about January barometer and all that kind of talk, I do like the fact that we've blown through any kind of aggressive, bullish, harmonic objectives here on this move up top here. We banged into that massive 1.618 off of that 2011 peak. And this 4669 here, which basically is the chaos theory off of this most recent bottom. I think this is the primary study that the market is working off of, this down, up, down, and all this energy explosion. So 1.618 is I think this level. Did I do that right? Where are my numbers? Should be this one. There. I can't see the 1.618. Anyway, there's 2.618. That's a pretty important chaos theory level. And what a surprise, if we look at that 2.618, that's right here. You can see, yep, the market did respect that quite a bit. Then we blasted through the top here. So next big objective following that should be 4669. Oh, hello, doink. So I wouldn't be surprised, kind of like how we acted here around 2.618. This was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or basically the better part of 2 months. I like that we're rallying here into the end of the year. Then we have to go through the January barometer. We know 2026 is going to be one hell of a bumpy year. So it wouldn't surprise me if through that January period, we have to do a bit of a consolidation. And then like early February, remember I had said I like the idea. Oh, isn't that interesting? Can you still hear me, Chris? What are you saying? Hello? Come in Tokyo. Can anybody hear me? What's going on? I guess Chris just decided to step away. Oh, Glass Insight says we can hear you. Well, that's good. So you can hear me in the Zoom call. Can anybody? Well, now somebody says I hear you. Okay, not weird. All right. Well, thank you. I don't know how much of that you heard. What was the last thing that you guys heard? What was I talking about? Once upon a time. That model doesn't actually exist, though. It retired rich right in the pocketbook of the bad guys again. All right. Okay. January. Okay. So anyway, I don't know if you heard anything that I said there. Sure hope you did. The point that I'm trying to make about all this is we run into an absolute ton of technical objectives here on this silver market. And considering how the market acted at its last key technical objective, this 2.618 off of the consolidation, I think this base basically set up this bull. So you can see how the market had to oscillate last time around that, and considering that we have the January barometer coming up, and considering how I was just talking a moment ago there about how if this is still a bull, I would ideally like to hunt sort of like middle of February or so for the next buy setup. So that would be like 4 weeks from now. So 1, 2, 3, 4. What a surprise. That would be coming out of this little doji event, which will set up our next move higher. If that is the case. I get the impression that maybe silver's a little bit overdone here in the near term, but considering all of the insanity that we know is coming down the pike here this coming year, I would not be surprised if our next destination is this cluster of harmonics up top here. And I suppose big blow off tops, 877s, that would take the price all the way up to what, about 130 bucks an ounce. Unfortunately, we don't know whether someone is trying to corner the silver market. Are they, they're not going to be called the Hunt brothers this term. Are they going to be called the, I don't know, pick your Chinese name du jour that's popular, i.e., the Chinese are trying to corner the silver market right now. An interesting side to that is it turns out that people in China right now are actually selling real estate there in droves. And I keep in mind that the Chinese, they historically actually like to keep their wealth in things like gold and silver. So you might argue that to a certain degree, this might also be a function of the implosion of the Beijing real estate market. I did see an article recently that said that nobody is buying real estate anymore in China. That con job has sailed. And actually, I did hear recently that the second or third largest Chinese real estate company is also going tits up. And I remember that Country Garden disaster a year or so ago. So there's another one that's in the works. So I think you could actually make the argument that a lot of this panic buying of these commodities is nothing more than people getting out of the Chinese real estate market and running, of course, into what they historically consider value. The problem here, though, is this is the same thing as like somebody coming in and buying Bitcoin at $120,000, $130,000 US. I remember distinctly as a broker back in the 90s, you couldn't give away silver ore. So this has everything to do with the way the stupid humans are acting amongst each other. And I don't think it really has anything to do with silver in particular. But anyway, every commodity has its day in the sun. And I think, it's important to point out, just so we have a historical frame of reference. You tell me, and just let me know. Do you think silver prices at $72 are actually high? Yeah, there's Michael. I'm getting rich. Yeah, Michael, classic gold bug. So, can anybody tell me, do you think that silver prices right now are actually at historic highs? And the thing is enough of you are my students that you're like, yeah, Brian, we've had this conversation 20 times before. So if you're relatively new to listening to the Beamish, here's the kick in the pants, and this will shock you folks if you've never seen this before. Are silver prices actually high? And the irony of it all is that no, they're not very high. Okay, that looks like a hell of a bull market. But let's maybe zoom out and just look at it from a historical perspective. Uh, are silver prices right now at the same levels that they were in 2011? No. But wait a minute, Brian. What's going on here? And actually, that's not the right one, is it? Oh, it always does that. Stupid. Look at this. Why on earth would I want to look at something on the Russian stock exchange? I don't know why they do that. Where that? There we go. Comex. So there's the, hey, Brian, I opened up the newspaper and silver is at new all-time highs. And there's the high from 2011. But if you take the money printing out of the equation, we're not even anywhere near 2011 highs. So that's the disgusting part about this, folks. And, do you think that's a high price? Well, it turns out that actually, on a relative basis, 1987. Remember, didn't we say something about Olga thinking that 86, 87 is repeating? Well, it turns out if we scroll back over time, well, there was the peak from 1987. So you could actually make an argument. There's 1987. Remember we saw that Newmont chart and how crazy it looked through 1987 peak? Well, on a relative basis, there is the bull market of 1987. That's what that is. So we're basically just at the same prices as silver was in 1987. And the irony of it all is that the last time that the United States of America, its books were in serious question, and people were wondering whether the United States was going to default on its debt, was, of course, the last Great Reset cycle, 1980. And I always tell students, I remember in this period here, and it's kind of a bitch. These guys won't give us the data going back there, but I remember specifically in this period sitting there at the kitchen table with my mother and her wondering whether she was going to be able to afford bus tickets with the hyperinflation. So the irony of it all is we look at this image right here. This is silver prices going back now to like the 70s. And we're not anywhere near those old highs, right? We go back to that silver chart. There's the high. My God. I mean, what price does this commodity have to go to get back to those levels? Isn't that crazy? I mean, does silver prices have to double from here just to get back to that 1980 peak? I'd say even more, right? Maybe even triple. My hunch here, for whatever it's worth, and it ain't worth much, but my hunch here is probably this is a very realistic technical objective right up there. Right? You might even argue that, all right, why don't we say things like, let's expect the market to rally into reload short zones. Seems realistic. So that would be up into this area. What the hell price is that though in the Fakazi dollar land? I can't even tell you what that price is because the damn charts are right off the map. Might be interesting to do like a chaos off of this. Boosh. There we go. So 4669, that's probably a pretty legit target, right? I think that was that well, no, actually that was slightly different. So this is off of the M2 adjusted ratio. But I guess what it's sort of suggesting is up into this area here. But the problem is in real dollars, thanks to these jerks, and really this was a coordinated effort. Anybody who's not in the baby boomer cohort, we all have one group of citizens to blame for this absolute train wreck of a society that we live in, and one population group only, the baby boomers. They are directly responsible for all of this. And you could argue that a lot of them are still in these positions of power. Jerry's a baby boomer. Donald Duck is a baby boomer. Yeah, it's so frustrating. I'm trying to figure out this solar. Anyway, the only reason why I'm talking about this as much as I am here today is obviously this stuff is front and center in the marketplace. So, on a relative basis, I would be saying, all right, probably rallies up against these highs. You saw that M2 adjusted chart, but I don't know what the fuck that reflects here. And, as I did there a moment ago, I think maybe that 4669 off of this range might be a good reference. Oh, yeah, that's what that is there. So that is that 4669. Well, in a way, though, for me, what this does suggest to me is that clearly we're coming into some sort of pivot here. I would imagine there's going to be some profit taking into the end of the year. And kind of like what we saw to that Newmont chart, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, we go back to what happened that last cycle. I can't believe I missed this frickin' trade. So obvious. But anyway, hindsight's always 2020, right? I do like that we're sort of in this phase right now. So if you are a gold and silver bug, okay, fine. I don't have a problem one way or the other. But if you're looking for a trade and you want to participate in this market, I think it behooves you to just wait for some consolidation and then get some sort of fractal or something to work with. Right now, coming in and just chasing blindly these kind of markets, you're asking for trouble. You might even argue in the near term, little bot objective, maybe we bump up into this high. But, if you think market structure, if you want to buy, you got to be able to risk down against these levels. And kind of like what I showed you back here, you could very easily get a nice little pullback. I don't think it'll be a break in the market, but, aside from the blow off top there, you could very easily have to go through a month or two of chop here. We might be like right up here right now, and you're like, okay, this is a bull. Yeah, I'm going to get rich. And you just, fuck me. And you just get ripped apart. And all they do is they just bring the market back against most recent horizontal support. Then the thing puts in a buy signal, and you're like, that's the move I was looking for. Damn it. So my suggestion, for whatever it's worth, is just maybe let this consolidate a bit here before you go chasing this up market. I think that's kind of asking for trouble. This just happens to be the gold stock, right? Same sort of thing on silver. Considering that we did hit some pretty big technical objectives, you can see how far away the moving averages are. And the moving averages themselves are very far apart. These moving averages don't like staying this far apart for too long. They usually want to come back and consolidate a little bit. So I would say, if you're a bull here, great, wonderful. This isn't a market I would buy. There are some junior mining stocks that I think look really interesting given the price point of the commodity. A lot of properties now are probably actually they're starting to pencil out that, hey, we can make money at $70 an ounce silver. So let's start figuring out whether it's worth putting some shovels in the ground. So there are a few metals mining stocks, but the problem is even those have started to move up appreciably from the buy levels. So they're starting to move away. There are a few names here, but locally here in British Columbia, Michael, you might want to pay attention because that haven't moved yet. But that's because of local politics and the local sort of regional government here. They're basically card carrying socialist quasi communists, and they're trying as hard as possible to derail as much business in this province as possible. So a lot of mining names, the properties are just sitting there. The stocks are doing absolutely nothing, and they're just waiting for this insane leftist, wokist, whatever the hell you want to call it, just like quasi-communist government to finally be escorted out of office. And then I wouldn't be surprised if there's a huge snapback. But BC politics, that might take a decade. Who knows? So I definitely like the idea. And keep in mind, too, the mid to late 80s, that was an absolute fantastic time in the junior and intermediate mining space because gold prices have been bid up to like $800 an ounce and through the end silver $50, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of the junior mining space did really, really well through the 1980s. There were notorious characters made through that time period. So this, one might even argue that what's the cure for high prices? Can anybody answer that question? What is the cure for high prices? Something about that. So what'll end up happening is who knows how long this tops up here. No, definitely not low prices, that's for sure. The industry itself will start to pencil in, well, actually it makes sense to open up this mine now. The profits are so insane that we can even create green slush funds out of all the money that we'll make. Well, politician, if I wave $100 million bill in your face to fund your special interest project, which is basically what politics is nowadays, will that get you off your ass? Oh, okay, sure. Yeah. You know how the game works. So the point here is that what, ironically enough, will be the detriment of this bull market will be, ironically enough, these high prices. Because I can guarantee you now, at 70 some odd dollars an ounce, there is a hell of a lot of silver out there that will be unlocked, and it'll eventually find its way to market, just not today. And actually, a really good anecdote to that, and it's kind of funny. I have no idea why I'm talking so much about silver here today. But if the easiest way, I think, for you to see when the end of this silver bull will be is just to keep an eye on the term structure. And actually, I'd be curious. I haven't looked at this in a while. But you tell me, and all you insanely, isn't that interesting? So you tell me, is this market in contango or backwardized? In the near term, you can see the cash market 79, then we go December 76, January 76. It's still somewhat contangoed. That's actually not nearly as bad. You'd have to see this go insanely backwardized for you to actually believe that we're actually in the actual crisis that will mark the top of this market. So all you silver bulls, actually, you should look at this image and you should say, actually, no, things aren't bad. I wouldn't say that they're overly healthy, but you notice like the futures market, 76, 40, 60, 90, then 77, 77, 78, 78, 78, 79. They're very tight. You can see that the spreads are tightening. But if we start seeing that the prices in the spot market, and you can see it happening in the cash market already, if you see that they start going higher than the deferred contracts, then you know that we're in the final phase of whatever this bull market is. So right now, this market actually I would call it flat. I wouldn't necessarily say it's contango, although the futures themselves are still in contango. The spot market is starting to flash crisis messages in that it's going higher than the futures market. But the end of this bull market, you will see that the cash markets here are substantially higher than the futures markets prices. And that's what's called backwardization. And it's sort of the classic hallmark of a market in crisis. So ironically enough, that's probably still coming. And that probably happens into the spring. In a weird sort of way, I think we can sort of see what's going to happen here is, through the January barometer, we probably have to see some sort of consolidation, which sets up the next leg. And then you have your final push higher into the spring, into that cycle peak, and think about things like Newmont and the way it acted. And keep in mind the final move of this the final leg of this move, this like 2 or 3 month window period, It might just be absolute freaking chaos out there in the marketplace. US dollar's going to zero. Tacos officially are not allowed to wear toupees anymore, and he looks like a blithering idiot with a bald head, barking at the American public. Did you see what he did? Just even Shane Gillis, I think that's his name, comic. He was on Joe Rogan there. And they were chit chatting about what Taco has done with his plaques that he's putting up, and like openly insulting Joe Biden in the United States of America, in Washington, D.C., like openly insulting a previous president of the United States by a sitting U.S. president. You're not supposed to fucking do that. You make your country look like idiots, fools. And now, ironically enough, and I think Rogan, to a certain degree, is pretty right wing anyway. And Gillis themselves, they're like embarrassed by what this guy is doing now. He's just gone completely unhinged. That's a kind of scenario where you have absolutely lack of confidence in your country, lack of confidence in your leadership, and things like gold go absolutely parabolic. And what I'm worried about here is, does anybody know why the crash in 87 actually happened? Well, hint, hint, hint. It had something to do with the bond market. And back at, I don't know whether I can show you this here. God, I could probably talk to you guys for a couple hours. Do you want to talk crypto today? Or are we just going to talk about what the hell the end of the world looks like? And actually, it's kind of hard to get this information, thanks to, of course, 1%, the way they mess us around. I think this is what the hell it was called. Why is that? Maybe it's T. Oh, yeah, there it is. The reason why they say that the stock market crashed in 87, for whatever it's worth, was, and I hate to say it, but I have a funny feeling we're seeing a repeat here. Notice here, 87. So these are yields. This is interest rates. So notice how yields, interest rates, we're heading lower, right? And this is all the end of 86, which is, I guess, kind of like what I'm thinking we're in right now. But then notice through 1986, and then once we head into 1987, look how the yields, can't get the prices. I can show you actually that I have some old copies of the price charts that I used to get in the mail. I still have them around. But this is yields. So do you notice that through the year of 1987, yields just went up, 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 up. And notice they actually hit a peak here in the week before the famous stock market crash in 87. So the real reason why the stocks crashed in the fall of 87 was because the bond market was going down pretty much the whole year of 1987. Yields up, bond prices down. This doesn't help my bond bullish thesis. And frankly speaking, like I said, if the Supreme Court comes out and says, sorry, your tariffs are illegal, you got to reverse them, give all these people the money back, there could very easily be conversations that the United States of America is going to go bankrupt and credit default and all that, which would mean that the bonds are going to get absolutely smashed. I think I've told you all, I'm in a bond buying mood. So if they do rip the bond prices down, right, these are yields. So if yield is going up, then that means bond price is going down. So if they do knock the shit out of the bond market here, I'll be more than happy to go and buy more bonds. I got a ton of money to put in a nice, ironically enough, nice safe place. Maybe that's another contradiction in terms. But if we do get this meltdown, this is actually what they attributed the 87 crash in the stock market to, was the fact that interest rates through that entire period just kept going higher and higher and higher. So, we look at interest rates. I'm watching interest rates obviously like a hawk here. And where are we here? It hasn't happened yet, and we did have a pretty powerful bullish reversal there through the summer last summer. But you see how wide this range is here. And I'd be more than happy to buy bonds down here, man. The interest rate here, that'd be like 7-8%, which actually is interesting too, because historically, I don't know whether you're familiar with the rule of 72, but at 7.2%, your money doubles every 10 years. And that's a huge attractor for a lot of people to buy bonds, is if I can guarantee that my money doubles in 10 years, I'll just go buy the bond and fuck the stock market. Could we get this meltdown? I'll tell you, they're not setting this thing up in the most bullish of scenarios here. I do have, my Hail Mary bull call spreads working. I do have a near-term bull call spread that's still relatively attractive. The Hail Mary trade, it's done nothing. It's dead. And they're options, so they'll stay alive until the day that they expire. But there is a very real possibility that if the Supreme Court comes out and says, sorry, Trump's no good, or tariffs no good, Trump always was no good, but you could very easily see this turn into some bear cascade here, and we got to rip all the way back down to here. And if that's the case, obviously that'll be, oh my God, growth is awesome. Hey, everything's going up in the stock market. But it's kind of like, what are you sure? What is going up? Is it like fear proxies, a lack of confidence in the system proxies? And if those things are going up, then you can kind of see how the scenario for an 87 crash at some point, and you've heard it all. Trump himself has said that, when interest rates were here, he was freaking out. I got to get that bond market down. Got to get that bond market down. Well, the irony of it all is he has actually engineered that, yes, the economy is slowing down. So he definitely engineered that. But now, do we have a stagflation scenario where he's got to go give all this tariff money back to all these people that got screwed? And of course, in my country, all these international people, they're never seeing that tariff money again. No way in hell the Chinese are going to get off the hook. And oh, by the way, the Chinese situation, this thing should hit a crescendo here in 86, 26, 27. So don't think for a moment that any other country in the world is immune. I still think that the United States of America is the best place in the world to have your money working, but that's not necessarily a good thing. That just means that everywhere else in the world is exponentially worse. So, I mean, I started off the conversation with, better cycle. This is going to be the toughest 4 years of your lives ahead of you. And I hate to say it, but everything here says yuck. So, do we want to go and talk Bitcoin now? God, what a mess. And the funny thing is about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I actually figured out the secret to the universe. The only problem is I'm 55 years old. I suppose that's not the end of the world. But I think I figured out the secret to the universe a little late, but I suppose we got a few more cycles ahead of us. You want to see the secret to the world? This is absolutely incredible. The secret to the world is all about these eclipses. And the problem here is that what I've noticed is that the stock market does like to stay disconnected from this study, whereas your beloved Bitcoin actually respects this shit like it's religion. It's beautiful, really, because now I do believe that the market actually has a tool that we can follow these money cycles like really, really well. Before, this is probably a good example here where the cycle year pivoted, and we all know that at 1.382 is on the Bitcoin 4-year cycle. Why a guy like Tom Lee says that this has no validity does makes no sense to me whatsoever. But I suppose, if anything, it's good that you have people like Tom Lee coming out and saying that this stuff is no good. Because as soon as a guy like that starts saying, yep, this is religion, this is exactly how the market's going to move, so follow this, then everybody's going to follow it. And then the study's going to lose validity. So if anything, it's awesome that a guy like that goes, no, 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 there's no 4-year cycle. Because then we go, all right, cool. So this cycle will just keep working. It's magic. Fucking A. But, if we piece together this funny 4-year cycle happening event study, this is religion. I don't know how you cannot. The funny thing is that if I'm not mistaken, and actually Solaris and Adam and all you guys down in the States, we should look into this. Because if I'm not mistaken, religions are one of the last organizations that are technically tax-free. So the question is, could we create a religion around the math of the Bitcoin cycles and then correspond this with the lunar solar eclipse cycles? I tell you, man, if people might call it a cult, I couldn't really care as long as it works. All I want to do is more of what works and less of what doesn't. And if we could actually create like a set of rules around this and, things like commandments and stuff, we could create a religion around this, and the religion could be tax-free. So that's something to ponder, considering this absolutely insane tax world we live in. But anyway, I digress. The point here, unfortunately, is, what does our future look like now? And as you can see, we just crossed through a 1.382, so that's not a good sign. And Bitcoin, of course, obeyed this like a fucking boss. I have to say, I love it. Hey there, I got James curious. Yeah, I tell you, I think there's something to this. Sniffs real good. All right, no idea what that means. Anyway, so the point here, of course, is we did have our fib time study tell us to cool our jets, and man, that worked like a freaking boss. I absolutely love it when I can put tweets out. I like to see tweets age well, and I did put out a tweet on October, I think it was October 20th or something. It was the exact date. I said, that's it. I am officially no longer a crypto bull. So quite pleased with that. But I do find that there are periods where you actually see that the stock market continues to grind higher, even though these cycles have rolled over. But what you notice is that the stock market eventually respects these time cycles. And if we go back, through the sickness, this was insane. So here's a good example. Bitcoin tops on that 1.382. We know that the market should bottom 1.618 to 1.786. You notice that the stock market continued to work its way a bit higher, and then we started to roll over. And then, of course, where are our unhappy windows? This, of course, was all the sickness. Actually, I guess the sickness was right in here. This was the end of the world, right? I will sacrifice my life to save capitalism. This was probably in my 15 years, let's say. In the crypto and Bitcoin space, the absolute best trade I ever saw in that 15 years in the space was when TRI site people stepped up and bought this 886 fib retracement. Absolutely textbook trade. Of course, this was, hey, oh, sorry. Well, there we go. Big Brother doesn't want me talking about this. But I'll sacrifice my life to save capitalism. Of course, that was a transition window. And then we went into uber insane bull mode. And of course, that was just, I think that was the best trade I have seen in my entire experience. And I often talk about this. This was one of the show producers years gone by who did that trade right there. And I was so proud of him for doing that because it clearly showed he learned. He figured out all the crap that I'm trying to teach you about reload zones and buying down markets, and he forced himself to step in there against those lows and bought like a boss. I was so proud of him. But anyway, the point I guess I'm trying to make here is Bitcoin goes through its normal natural cycle and follows this 4-year study like a boss. But you notice that the stock market, while it does have to make its capitulation lows at appropriate time periods and appropriate locations, it can quite often through these windows actually act very illogically. And I think this is all to do with how basically the stock market is rigged. Oh, what a surprise. And how there's always an up only bias to this market on a day-to-day basis because of things like ETFs and stuff like that. But ultimately, these things have to do their appropriate corrections. So this window here was just basically a chop Vegas. Do we go through chop Vegas here through this particular cycle? Maybe. But also remember too that, the chop Vegas, that's an 80% correction in Bitcoin price. And of course, these, the stock market's going to zero. Of course, this was, absolute chaos in the stock market. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that this next period, while we're in this unfriendly window, and then of course all our original conversations there about the way the metals markets and how that's really a proxy on confidence in the system. And of course now silver is an AI metal after all. That's why it's rallying. What? So screwy. And the irony of it all is you can actually start seeing tomorrow's bubble already starting to build now. And then, of course, when the growth prospects for the economy start coming into question, maybe we actually have to have a recession. Imagine that. And that's what I think we have to go through in 2030 is we actually have to have a recession, maybe even a depression. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But you notice that, oh, what a surprise. Actually, between now and then, there is going to be a Bitcoin rally window. I wouldn't be surprised if we have to do things like 80% corrections, which unfortunately means that this correction could be quite a bit deeper than what these fun little images have on here. I just sort of ballpark this. I do like the idea with regard to Bitcoin, and probably better to look at this image. I do like how, and anybody who has any questions as to the momentum of this market right now, this market is clearly rolled over here. Don't fight this. The momentum of the market here is down. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. What I would just simply say here is, as I said, this correction here, you can see it right there, right? This correction here, I don't think our bots are on here anymore. This correction here, ironically enough, it should be about 70-80%. So somewhere down in that area. Yeah, I hate to say it, folks, but I actually like that number. And what I think they're doing here, which is scary. So somebody write this down, right? It should be interesting going forward, because I think what's going to happen here is, remember I talked to you guys recently about how I thought that this year was very similar to this year. And now we had basically the market come off its peak back here in 17, 18. Um, and what I found interesting about this is everybody was pretty much okay with, well, Bitcoin's $5,000, $6,000. I mean, yeah, it's not 20 G's. That was a little crazy talk anyway. And then, you notice we kind of went sideways for a while here. Also, too, think about that number there. 19 and change all the way down to 5, 6. So that's like 75% just right there. Yeah, keep that in mind. I don't see any buying strength in this market at all. Just no strength whatsoever. And unfortunately, when it comes to things like cryptocurrencies, I hate to say it, but the number one question I would have is, why would you own one of these? I can completely understand trying to evade all the money printing craziness. I might argue that that's a bit backward looking. I also might argue too, $125,000 for one of these things. I mean, I think if you bought the Bitcoin story anywhere, 10, 15 years ago, you were insulated nicely from that great reset. So what worries me here was I was kind of expecting, dead cat bounce. All right, let's bounce. That's usually what happens. You notice there just was no bounce. That's getting a bit concerning because all this sort of technical justification for the bounce, W's in the indicators, divergences, market oversold, all that stuff has played itself out now. The market had the opportunity to bounce and it didn't bounce. That's not good. I've been playing this game long enough. I know when I smell a weak market, and this feels like a weak market. I'm sorry. There's the image I wanted to show you. I mean, on top of the fact that these momentum indicators look like absolute train wreck, but if we look at price itself, what I would have expected was inside bar, bounce back up into moving average resistance, play a little bit of ping pong here. If we put in a W, all right, rock and roll, maybe the bull's still alive. You notice the bounce just couldn't find any traction in this damn megaphone line. It has just stopped this market in its tracks. And I even said last week, I was like, all right, well, we had a doji here this week. Are we going to get a doji next week? It turns out, yeah, that's exactly what happened. Damn. But at the same time, too, you can see we're kind of we can't get our butt back above this darn trend line. And if until we get it, we have to get back above this down trend line. And then we have to put in bullish structure, which means this thing's a bear and it's struggling like the dickens to try and at least just get back to like neutral, get back above these trend lines, validate that this is a trading range, and then maybe start putting in W's where we can look for rallies. We can't even get back above these damn trend lines. If we look at it from this perspective, this is the daily price chart. You can see the fight here. And I guess this is what kind of bothers me right now. You've probably heard me talk about these billiard ball fractals in the past. And I get the distinct impression that we are like right here. I don't know whether you can see that or not. Right here. But yeah, okay. So you can see wild gyration, big dump, counter trend rally, then a dump, and then a very quiet consolidation. So big dump, counter trend rally, look how we have the higher highs here, just like this, higher highs here, and then dump, and then look how we're going sideways here. Isn't that cool? I'd take a screenshot of that. You'd be surprised how often this billiard ball fractal, it plays itself out and you go, I can't believe how cliche that is. So, we're right at this precipice that, okay, if you want to be a bull and you still want to be bullish, great. is get on the other side of this damn trend line and start painting some W's. But look what I actually see. If this is a billiard ball fractal, look what they're going to do. They're going to chop the market back up into the top end of this range, right? Candle body highs for trade location, reload short zones, 1.618, fog and bombs, blah, 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 blah. And then, we're into early January. I remember I had said that early January, I do like the idea of the market perking up here a little bit. I think that's your January effect, and it's going to last all of about 3 days. And then into the latter part of January, reflecting that January barometer and the worry that I have about this whole capitalist market heading into the end of this year and into that big political event. Notice how if this is a billiard ball fractal, we're just going to grind our way lower and carve out some sort of panic low about the 21st or 22nd. Can you guys see this billiard ball fractal I have on here? It might be actually hard for you to see that. There we go. And then what's interesting here is, and I like this thinking, is that about a week or so before the end of the month, before the end of February, this is going to reflect what happens in the market like the week of the election, right? The election's the first Tuesday in November. So you have some sort of, this is almost like sell the rumor, the election happens, and buy the news into the end of the month, or basically reflecting what we expect to see happen into the end of 2026. I like that thinking. Then I like the idea that if this bottom can come in, that rally window that we saw at the very beginning of January will reflect that rally that we should see into the spring in the stock market and, in all risk assets probably. And that's probably a revisit of these highs. Well, nah, I don't know. Maybe we can't get up there. That would be testing all the old highs. That's a bit much. But I wouldn't be surprised, actually. That's a pretty good objective. Yeah, I find it. I mean, let's cross the bridge when we get to it. Should we be able to actually carve out a very wide double bottom here? We might have the case to take a serious run back up top into the spring. But I think it's just a little too far away for us to make any of those kind of grandiose predictions. It is interesting. Notice how that 877 there is right up against those highs. So, maybe into that seasonal peak into the spring, maybe we walk our way up this trend line here and we put in some sort of top up against that 877 and against the old historic highs. That would not surprise me at all. And then maybe, Tom Lee's vindicated. Now I noticed if you actually look at Ethereum, he's now not talking $10,000 anymore on Ethereum, which I did find amusing. But he is now making the grand prediction that Ethereum, I don't know whether he's using any TA. I noticed he doesn't really do a lot of TA himself, but, maybe it's his team. But they've come up with some grandiose prediction of $7,000 on Ethereum through 2026. Now, I don't know how the hell they come up with that number. I find it very hard to believe, but maybe if we go into some sort of insane blow off top and gold's going absolutely insane, silver's going to $100 an ounce, whatever. Maybe we could rally up into 6Gs. Maybe. I think that's going to be awfully difficult. And keep in mind that rally, yeah. See, the problem is the rally window is into there. So you're trying to tell me that this thing, and how the hell he comes up with like $7,000-$8,000 window up there? That doesn't make any sense to me. I could see A to B. Come on, you. Something like there to there. A lot of ifs here though. Anyway, where are we here? Let's go boom, and then go boom, and then go boom, and then go boom, up into there. I like a stab up into there. Maybe they're saying, well, maybe this will be alt ABCDs, which will take us up there. Well, maybe that's how he gets his 7,000, 8,000. I don't know. That's not a prediction that I would hang my hat on and say, you know what, I'm willing to risk my career to say that this market's going up here. I think that's a bit of a stretch. Having said that, conservative objective right there would be 6,000, 6,100 kind of idea. And I do find that a bit of a stretch. Well, we'll see how it goes. By all means, if we start seeing W's come in here off of these bought levels, you got one low, you got two lows. Technically, you got a third low here. We got a new W coming in. I wouldn't fault you if you're like, I kind of like the idea of the crypto market rallying into the summer. Yeah, isn't that interesting? So 1, 2, 3. Give me a W on the other side of this trend line. There's the bot entry looking for sky high prices. Interesting how that is right up against the midpoint of that channel. But you could maybe like front run the bot, see if this, any kind of, I would prefer to see a full on W on the other side of this trend line. If anything, you know what, through this little January, February window, I actually like, if you are interested in trading this thing into the spring, I think there might be a nice little window in here for you to seriously consider. Maybe even let this January period just play itself out. Maybe we pop up, then maybe come down. Keep drawing reload zones. In fact, actually, there was one I was interested in, this link, and it kind of is fucking around with me right here. I did have a cute little W that came in here. Took a shot off it, got my ass kicked. Way to go, Brian. You suck. But, it's a trader's life. Get used to it. I didn't really want to come in and chase way up top here. So what I've basically said is I do like this. And, end of January, middle of February, this is actually a name that I think I could see myself buying. If, it's a lot of ifs. But you can see this is that same billiard ball fractal kind of thinking. I don't know whether you can see the billiard ball. Go like that. So there is that same billiard ball fractal thought. Remember, I was just making reference to it over here, this same image. So you can kind of see it happening here as well. Big down, up, then squiggly, squiggly. So then this is that quiet middle period. Then we have a rally back up top here. I think that's actually what's going to happen here over the coming week, into the end of the year. Well, maybe not now, but that's what I would have thought. But we'll see how this goes. The point here is that notice I actually like, considering that January barometer kind of thinking, I like a dip into that January window and a serious test of these lows. And I have on here, they were just in the short term, a little bull ABCD. It looks like they busted that out though, so that's not valid now. But I do, in fact, Casey, where's Casey in his bow tie? Like you can kind of see this has got Casey's bow tie written all over it. So right in there. There's Casey and his bow tie. I do like the idea of the market working its way up, and that's actually, look at that. That's right into the actual year end. Then we do our January barometer, lots of choppy, choppy, chop. And unfortunately, I do think that this choppy, choppy, chop has to go on through February. The end of, where are we here? This is a 4-hour chart, so it's a little bit condensed. But anyway, here's the end of the end of January way over here. So actually, yeah, I kind of like that because I wouldn't be surprised. I'm going to be hunting for an entry down in here. I would not be surprised, how do we say this? I like January, of course, telling us what the year should look like. So middle of January, actually, I like this to be pretty high. But then, of course, heading into the election, I like some sort of crazy, whoops, panic dump. Come on, you quit fighting me. Jesus, why is this? All right. Anyway, dump into the February window, and then we'll start forming some sort of base to take us into the spring. So I guess the long and short of it here is you can kind of see I'm looking for a bit of chop here. And nothing really for me to do here right now just yet, because unfortunately I do have this megaphone, which doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence, considering that the buy now on this thing actually comes in way up here. And you can see anybody who bought that W right now is cursing my name as we speak. So I'm a little bit leery about getting too bullish here just yet. Having said that, I think there was a very aggressive little buy signal on this guy. And that produced that rally. It was not a bad looking little rally, but at the same time, too, because that was a V bottom and a whole bunch of candle body lows. I just simply said, like, I don't want to chase and buy way up top here. I really want to be buying down in reload zones. And if this is that billiard ball that I talked about a second ago, I don't think there's a huge hurry here. This is going to be majorly choppy back and forth here for the next month or so. Oh, really? What time is it? It's already 1 o'clock. Holy fuck. Where? I didn't even say anything. Damn it. Anyway, moving our attention over to shitcoins. Did notice this guy perking up here lately. I think he did actually hit a bit of a technical objective. Did this cute little demo trade of everybody. Of course, we demoed shorting off the top here. I tried to have on two positions at once. Trading Blue wouldn't allow that, so I just have like notations here. This is gobbledygook messy though. Market did dump all the way down into actually I think this was like a 61.8 off of a higher time frame. So we took the remaining short off and strapped on a long, then let a big chunk of the long go on this nice little, A, B, C, D. Then we had a bit of a consolidation. I had this minor A, B, C, D level. So I threw some up there and was filled when the market rallied up and hit that level. I think you could make the argument that this bullish bot enter off of this market structure, take profit target. That was just hit this morning. Was I a little bit impatient and maybe a little amateur hopping off at this ABCD target when I could have very easily just waited for the bot objective? Yeah, probably. But it's not that big of a deal. You can see we have 0.35 of this position still left on the books, stops at scratch. I don't know what the hell this thing's going to do, but on balance, hopefully you can see how that was a pretty good demonstration on how I would manage trades. Throw on a whack, risk $100, pay yourself when the market affords you the opportunity, take 2/3 of the position off, stop at scratch, then let this thing breathe. And if we start painting further upside targets, just spoon feed the market. And right now, I certainly don't have any sell signals here. But my hunch is this thing's probably getting exhausted, come up against horizontal support and resistance, and the bot take profit target. So what do you think the odds are we're starting to see divergences started to build here on the momentum indicators? There's the divergence in MACD. There's Willie stupidly overbought. We have 1M in RSI. If I got a second M in RSI, that would actually be a short setup. And I might even just take this off the books at that point. But for now, I think probably the best thing for you to do is just be spoon feeding the stuff that you bought off the bottom. And it is interesting that this thing could move up as much as it is, but a lot of these cryptos, including, this crazy ass Ethereum and things like Bitcoin, they're just stuck. And that, in my opinion, folks, is not a good sign. This market should have rallied the way that this ZEC did rally, and the fact that it didn't actually is a bit worrisome. And also, too, remember our cycles have turned. So it's awfully tough to be bullish of this stuff anyway. So, anyway, hopefully that gives you an idea what I'm thinking about with crypto. Probably the final thought here is we'd go and take a look at where the hell did I have it? I guess it's here. The total market. And unfortunately, same kind of conversation as I had with regard to all the others. I think you could make the argument that until we get our butt back above like these kind of trend lines, which is good, we got our butt above there, and then we start painting W's. I think we are stuck on this trend line. This is an interesting trend line. It's off of this peak and this peak, and of course confirmed with this market structure. But I think this trend line is even more valid. And this is a handy thing if you want to learn how to be a better technician. Is quite often what you'll see is that the price peak point is actually a bit of an anomaly. Notice that when I drew the trend line off of these two peaks, look what happens when I go backwards. Look how it turns out that that trend line actually is that peak right there. So you can, and I've seen a lot of people over my career do this, where you just simply say, I'm going to draw a trend line not off of the highest high. And also notice too, look how the diamond low is actually that trend line. But I'm going to draw my trend line off of the previous peak. And think of this as like a head and shoulders, where I'm drawing my trend line from shoulder to shoulder. And I'm not going to include the head in the study. But notice, look how that absolutely lined up perfectly with that high there. This is a good example of you listening to the market. Actually, let's not tell the market what the trend is. Let's draw our lines and let's just see if the market itself is validating the study. And that, my friends, is validation of this shoulder to shoulder trend line. Oh, that was super cool. So I would make the argument that this thing is a bear, unfortunately, until we get our butts back above and W back above this trend line here. So you can see was basically expecting some sort of bounce. And again, this is concerning that this space just can't fucking bounce. Moving averages are all very negative here. There is no bullishness here. We have to get, confirm this W, which actually gives us a buy signal off a break of this trend line, but it's a weak one. Because I think we're going to have to bang up against this trend line and all of these highs, and this is going to be resistance. Then let's get on the other side of that trend line, and then let's start putting in some structure, very much like we had to do here. Notice we broke above this trend line here, but no W's, no W's, no W's, still no W's. Well, is this finally the W? So the point here is, you look at that total, and this is everything but Ethereum and Bitcoin. There's just nothing to work with there yet. Sucks, but I might as well tell you the truth rather than bullshit you. So put it all together. I'm a little concerned that this guy's actually looking a little exhausted here now, because there were little parts of the market that wanted to rally. And I noticed that this guy here tried to drag up here, but he's got this nasty megaphone pattern here that actually is extremely dangerous. And then, you look at things like Ethereum, can't buy a friend. And ironically enough, the fact that this is actually associated with Trump now, because remember, I've told you guys all along here, I don't think crypto can rally unless, Jerkhead himself actually is going to take advantage of this. And is anybody buying this idiot right here, right now? Nobody. I suppose it wouldn't be a bad long shot just to simply buy the fractal and risk to the lows. But this guy can't buy a friend here now. And I don't know whether you see the rhetoric, but wow, is he ever in trouble here over this Epstein crap? So this isn't looking pretty for him at all. Anyway, so put it all together. I would love to sit here and say, yep, buy crypto, buy Bitcoins, buy Ethereum, buy all this stuff. You're going to guarantee to get rich. I just don't see it. And what I'm worried about is dead cat bounces that should have bounced, and now what do we do? I don't even have time to get into the stocks, but I might even argue something like the ETFs. This thing is just absolutely and totally parked. And when you actually look at the derivatives trading information off of this thing, I mean, it is absolutely stunning how corrupt the trading is in this thing. So as a result, if they have a very specific agenda with what they want this thing to do into year end, then there's no way in hell Bitcoin itself is going to do anything. This asset has been securitized. All right, well, that was fun. I hope you enjoyed all that. Chris says there are a couple questions, so we'll kind of try and sneak around to that, and hopefully I can give you an answer you're going to like, but I have a bad feeling it's probably not going to be too agreeable. Thank you very much, Solaris, for your kind wishes for Lily and I this afternoon. Appreciate it. And actually, we had a very good Christmas day together. So I got all his peanut butter pancakes, and we did a full tour of the Lower Mainland for him. About 4 hours of driving. So he was a happy camper. I can't remember the last time Santa visited me. That just doesn't exist in my life. But hey, if I can put a smile on his face, then that's all the Christmas gift I need. All right. All right, here we are, 28th of December, 2025. Here we go. Hi, Brian. I bought a lifetime TRI membership and just heard you were leaving. You'll be leaving. Will lifetime members be grandfathered into your new platform? Unequivocal, no. Not even close. Forget about it, buddy. Or would you need to purchase a new membership? Everything here is to do with TRI. I am formally walking away from TRI. You are more than welcome to stay and continue working with Julian and Sjord and whoever else they have in the works. And I'm sure they're going to give you an awesome product, but I don't have any association with TRI anymore, which is really sad because it'll be interesting. I have to go and figure out a new name for myself in the market.
Recording stopped.
So, at the same time, too, I am not asking an arm and a leg for you to participate in wherever I will be in the future, but the team did respectfully ask that I not shill all of you before I left, so I'm honoring that obligation. And can you guys all give me some feedback? Have you felt as though I've been shilling the crap out of where I'm heading in the future? Do any of you even know where I'm heading in the future? Because frankly speaking, I don't think I've had a lot of people say I haven't heard you shill at all. I don't even know where the hell you're going. So I think I've been fairly honorable with my commitment not to shill you. And if you are interested in learning about where I will be and what I will be doing, you can always DM me directly. I'm not going to talk about that kind of stuff on a broadcast like this. So there's my answer for you. Whoever it was that asked this question, just DM me and we can chat. But for whatever it's worth, I'm not asking much. The only thing I want from people, if you do want to work with me in the future, is I have to hire an admin person to look after all this crap. You know, I'm terrible at this admin stuff. And of course, they need a salary and a wage. And that is what any subscription to any sites that I'll be doing is going to be paying for that admin person. So number 2, I was a bit surprised there hasn't been a formal farewell episode from Julian and Siord about your departure. Yeah, I was a bit surprised too. I asked them repeatedly if they wanted to come on. So I have asked repeatedly over the past few months, can you send me some sort of message to tell these people? So unfortunately, I can't even answer to this. I can't speak to this. The next time Julian does one of his videos, I suppose that's your opportunity to interact with them or even ask in the lounge at them. I'm sure they'll be happy to help you. And then number 3, hi Brian, do you think there's a chance we'll see altcoin rally sometime in 26? Since the Benner cycle is to top, supposed to be in 26. Well, I do kind of think that. I don't think Tom Lee's going to be made to look like that much of a fool. I think there will be vindication for him. And as I sort of talked about with what 1946 looked like, and then what 1986 looked like, keep in mind, this is basically that same year of those great reset cycle years. I do think that there's actually going to be a push higher in the risk space. Ironically enough, actually, I'm buying lots of stock. So, and I'm even buying stock in companies that are associated with Charlie Lee. So, you can't say I'm not. And you heard me talk about Link. I have all the plans to basically do exactly what I did, although, what I did back like 5-10 years ago in the crypto space, I guess 10 years ago now. I fully plan to do exactly the same thing that I've done every cycle. And of course, when Brian says, get your skirt together, and that should be next September, October, November, all the way through to probably about the middle of 2027, I'm going to be in there loading up on this stuff again. So I think that there could be a cycle rally. I don't think we see new highs, and I think Tom Lee's a little bit naive there, expecting a push to new highs on things like Ethereum into 2026. But I definitely could see a counter trend rally back up to test the highs. And if that's the case, then the rest of the eco space should recover to a certain degree. And if anything, let's watch how the January barometer acts. And you might even find, if we're really lucky, because altcoins are part of the venture cap cycle, part of the market, you might actually find that the January effect, which is where small caps actually outperform the beginning of January, so you might find that some of your altcoins actually jump up nicely. And that Link, I could very easily see that thing put in some sort of bottom and jump up here. I could see Ethereum jump up here. I don't know whether we see new highs, and whatever the jump is here, it will be first to things like 38.2s, 1.618s off of chaos studies and stuff like that. And then we start climbing the wall of worry. But we got to get through all that first. You're asking my opinion? My opinion, and that's all it is. Yeah, I actually think there should be a nice little counter trend rally into the spring here, and to see a little bit of price appreciation in a lot of these altcoins. So there's my answer for you. Okay, folks, 1:24. I have to get out of here, of course, to go and give the boy an awesome afternoon. Hope you enjoyed that offering. There you go. Yeah, all you got to do is follow Chunky Bear 15's comment there. And yeah, I know, Nori. I'm not going to comment on all that stuff. I would like this to finish on a nice positive up note. Slow and steady wins the race. PMA for the win. I'm on Discord. I'm on Twitter or X or whatever the fuck you're supposed to call it. So if you want to ask me where I'm going to be and how to keep up, just DM me. In this internet world, that shouldn't be very difficult. So next weekend, it will be a brand new environment for all of us. All of us. And actually, I'm super excited because I've got this group of 9 absolutely motivated traders, and we're going to start building our army of traders starting January 1st. So I'm super excited to embrace that. So there are lots of positives here in the near future. So. Okay, everybody, have yourself an awesome rest of your day. Thank you very much for your attention. All the best at the irrationalinvestor.com going forward. Positive mental attitude, slow and steady wins the race. Don't take no wooden nickels. My number one job here, as always has been from day one, is to try and help you all. So the only way you can learn is to be in a positive frame of mind and framework. So I hope my positivity has spilled over to you in this very trying time to be a human being. And it has been an absolute honor and a privilege and a pleasure to help as many of you as I possibly have can at TRI over the years. And there's no reason any of this should stop in the near term. So all the best. And the only thing left to say to you good people is a hearty bye for now.